Hi, it's Kiffin Lobates here, and today I wanted to talk a bit about the Interplanetary File System, which is a decentralized file storage that allows you to retrieve files not using a name label, but using content addressing. So what is content addressing? Well, let's use an analogy with a library. If you go to a library and you're looking for a book, you can either go to various shelves where they're sorted by genre and then alphabetically by author, or you could have a library where the books are all sorted alphabetically by title, or you could have a library where you have an indexing system with some kind of cataloging number. For example, was it Dewey Decimal, I think, is one of the popular ones. I'm not a librarian by training, so I don't really know. And then you go and look up in a filing cabinet where there's cards with indexes, or nowadays it would be a computer, and that gives you the identification number, and then that tells you which shelf to go to. And that is not content addressing, because the ordering is kind of arbitrary based on the name of the author and how you categorize various topics. However, what you can do in the computing world, and a technique that is used to actually sort and search, is using hash functions. You take your file and you put it into a hash function, and that gives you a fingerprint of the file with a fixed length number as an output. And in fact, there's a chapter in my book, a whole chapter on hash functions, because they're very important in cryptography, in blockchain, and actually in computing in general. And what the Interplanetary File System does is, rather than have content found by people coming up with a URL saying this web server / this folder / this file name to find this file, the file is hashed, it gets this unique fingerprint, and it's the fingerprint that is used in order to find the file. You actually type IPFS : / and then what looks like a string of gobbledygook, and that's the hash of the file. And it has a couple of advantages. Firstly, computers are really good at quickly searching through lists of hashes using something called Bloom filters. So there's a computing technique that allows you to find and retrieve such a file much quicker than by the normal sorting things out via names that have been assigned to them arbitrarily. And the second thing is, it allows the immutable storing, or rather not immutable, but it allows you to store files and know that the file that you're retrieving hasn't been tampered with. So rather than immutable, what I should have said back there is tamper-proof storing of files. The downside to the IPFS is that whereas our traditional web structure is now really well defined and adopted throughout all the browsers and stuff like that, the fact is that although you can type HTTPS : / or HTTP : / and then your domain name and then your file location, a lot of the browsers at the moment haven't implemented the Interplanetary File System prefix, which is IPFS : //. Now, the Brave browser has it, and you can get extensions for Chrome to allow it to do that too. But in practice, on most browsers, what you have to do is you have to go to an IPFS gateway. That's a web server specifically dedicated to serving up files that have been stored on the IPFS. And there are a couple of well-known ones, for example, Pinata, .cloud, and Infura. The IPFS.org organization also has one of these gateways that is very popular. But of course, at some point, hopefully, all these web browser providers will natively support IPFS, and then it'll become a lot easier to use that system. And quite frankly, I'm looking forward to that day, because it will make life a lot simpler. I do use Brave at the moment, but sometimes I'm trying to share files with people who for some reason are using Firefox or Safari or something like that, and then it doesn't work. Anyway, that's an introduction to the IPFS from a browser user's perspective, and the fact that it's not a standard feature of all the browsers yet is probably the reason why most of you are not familiar with it. However, I do think that sometime in the not too distant future it will become a standard browser feature, and then you'll get familiar with it, and the IPFS will get a lot more adoption. At least it's to be hoped for. So that's today's video on the IPFS. I hope you found it interesting, and I'll see you all in the next episode soon. Bye for now.